The gospel message is offensive enough. Let's not add more offense to it. I'm like, hey, the pro-life message is offensive enough, especially now, post-Dobbs, it's really offensive. Let's not add more offense to it. Let's be the loving, rational, open-minded, humble, like the kinds of pro-life people the kinds of people you want to talk to, that you're interested in, that you're intrigued by once you start talking to them. We can make that happen, but sometimes...
He's debated leaders from Planned Parenthood and NARAL. He's spoken to tens of thousands across the country, not to win arguments, but to change hearts. Josh Brahm believes the pro-life movement needs more than passion. It needs clarity, compassion, and conversations rooted in truth. As president of Equal Rights Institute, Josh is training a new generation of pro-life advocates to think clearly, communicate effectively, and love genuinely. From crowded college campuses where tensions run high to quiet coffee shop conversations where worldviews collide, Josh has seen it all. He's seen people walk away angry and others walk away thinking differently for the first time. Because for him, it's never about scoring points or proving someone's wrong. It's about seeing the person across from you, their story, their pain, their dignity, and speaking to the heart. At a time when debates often turn into shouting matches, Josh insists that real change happens when we slow down, when we ask better questions, when we listen before we speak. He's helping young people move beyond slogans and sound bites, showing them how to engage with both courage and kindness, how to make a case for life that's intellectually honest and emotionally intelligent. From classrooms to conference stages, his message remains the same. Persuasion begins with relationship, and love is the foundation of every true conversation. I'm Brian Westbrook, and this is Living Pro-Life.
Well, welcome, Josh, to the program. I appreciate you being on.
Oh, it's great to be on with you. Thanks for having me.
Well, there's so much that we can talk about here in the pro-life movement. And we talked about earlier about kind of the politics of abortion, pro-life politics, these kind of things, both in our churches, on the ground, but also at the state and federal levels. So how are we doing?
How is the pro-life movement doing politically? I think we're not doing well right now. I think it's really challenging. I think a lot has changed. And I'm not a political expert or something like that, but I would say like the pro-life movement, I think it got really used. I'll say personally, I got really used to expecting like the Republican Party to just do a really good job of sort of like generally being for protecting life at the legislative level. They were going to be the pro-life party, whether or not whatever the Democratic Party was doing, they were going to be pro-life when it came to abortion. And we got really connected to that party. And I think a lot of people can look around and see that it's a challenge. We have a really challenging situation right now where a lot of the movement is still, I think, very kind of connected to the current president, who is often called the most pro-life president in history. And he did some really pro-life things. I'm very grateful for the Supreme Court justices. But also it's complicated because he also says some really dehumanizing things about people and lets a lot of other people in his administration do a lot of really dehumanizing, like human rights violating kinds of things. And when we pro-lifers want to be known to the world as people who care about life, like we are not here because we hate women or we get like really, really mad when people have premarital sex and we want to punish them. Like that's not what's actually going on. We value life. We really don't want people to be able to be killed unjustly. So we have that, but then we have a president who also does a lot of things that are really hard, that kind of seem to conflict with that. And the rest of the world, I think, sees that, and that puts the pro-life movement in a really challenging situation.
So for those who are listening, how can we take this information and say, okay, we have the president who was elected, who was, or at least claimed to be, more pro-life than the other candidate or candidates. And so here we are with whether it's a tweet or another post or these kind of things or things that he is saying or doing. How are we as pro-lifers supposed to react to some of these things?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, going backwards, if we rewind the tape, I think something that we should have been doing more the entire time. Like, we should have always been more thoughtful about who we're connecting ourselves with. And there's a question when I would get into conversations with people about, like, how do we figure out how to vote and all these different things? There's a question that I would ask that I never found a pro-life person who had ever thought about this before. And which was basic. It's just like, it's a very basic philosopher question. This is not like a real smart question. This is philosophy 101. But it's like, what is the limiting principle? In other words, if David Duke, leader of the Ku Klux Klan, said, I'm running for president and my top issue is pro-life. I'm going to give pro-lifers everything they want. Supreme Court justices, all the things. I'm going to do everything, all their wildest dreams. We shouldn't support him, right? Like, right. We should be like, no, that's too far. There are some people that are too far, even if they'll do things that are pro-life. We shouldn't support all of the other things that are going on there. No one had thought about that. They were more used to thinking about, well, like, what is the other side doing? Well, there's some bad stuff that I can point at there, and then got used to not paying attention, I think, to the news. Like, I had this really interesting conversation with someone like 2 months before the election. I spoke at this conference. And I was hanging out with this guy, really, really cool pro-life guy, new to the job, but we're talking about politics. And I was like, oh, you hear about, like, whatever it was going on at the time. I'm going to say what it was. But I was like, what do you think about this thing going on? He was like, oh, I have no idea. I got so tired of hearing all the like anti-Trump news. I just haven't been like listening to the news for like a year. And I'm like, well, that might be a problem. There might be a lot of really relevant things that we should know about and be talking about and be, so we should be finding common ground is at least one really obvious thing. I'm encouraging all pro-life people to go on a common ground hunt. You should be able to find at least one thing that you disagree with Trump about, because he's not Jesus. So he's not going to be perfect about everything. So he's going to have there's a lot, but you can find something and be very open about that with your pro-choice friends and colleagues who are really probably going to need to understand that. Like, there are some people who will not be able to hear your thoughts about pro-life if they think that you're a racist or a bigot or something like that. And they might think that because you supported Trump. You might need to explain why you supported Trump or why you voted for him.
Yeah.
In spite of that, and like explain that for them to be able to hear you. So it's gonna make the conversation more complicated.
Again, we're talking with Josh at Equal Rights Institute. Thank you, Josh, for being on the program again. So tell us a little bit about your work on a daily basis.
Yeah, well, so at Equal Rights Institute, I started Equal Rights Institute 11 years ago. I've been in the pro-life movement since I was 18. Like, this is what I knew I wanted to do from when I was 11. I wanted to be Scott Klusendorf when I grew up, basically. Like, I literally had early Scott Klusendorf tapes from Hume Lake when I was 11 years old. And I'm just like wearing out the tape, memorizing his arguments, memorizing his jokes. I was telling people all of it. I was going to be a pro-life speaker when I grew up, and that's what I meant. I was going to be Scott. And I worked at multiple different kind of pro-life organizations. But 11 years ago, I started Equal Rights Institute because I had a unique vision for what I thought it should look like when pro-life and pro-choice people have conversations with each other, have dialogues. And that vision was unfortunately too different from all of my colleagues, whom I have a lot of respect for. Like, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. I still love working with Scott and Trent Horn, Stephanie Gray, Steve Wagner, like all these wonderful people that we are all constantly still doing like the iron sharpening iron thing. We still had enough unique thoughts that if I ended up somewhere else, I would just end up trying to reform it from within, which would be really frustrating and unfair for like everybody involved. So I never wanted to run a group. I'd been offered those opportunities, like, no, never. And just by process of elimination, there was no other way, I thought, to accomplish the vision. And so my brother and I launched Equal Rights Institute 11 years ago. And our day to day, in the end, like, regardless of what project we're working on, like, there's a few big projects we're working on right now, but in the end of the day, it all comes down to one thing. We are trying to help pro-life people to be less weird.
Less
weird and more like Jesus. Now, let me say something about the weird. Because there's good kind of weird and bad kind of weird, all right? There's good weird. This is like, I imagine, I'm sure you've been to the Washington, D.C. March for Life, right?
Sure.
You've seen 400,000 or so pro-lifers, a bunch of like young kids, like bust there from Catholic schools all over the place. And they're doing this march in the cold or the rain. I literally was part of one of these things. It flash flooded while we were there. It was in Atlanta. And people joked, it literally was Roe versus Wade. Like it was a lot. It was a lot. It's the good kind of weird are the people that are going out and doing that. Here's what I don't want us to be. We all know those people that are well-meaning, but off-putting. They get in their own way when they try to change people's minds. Greg Kokel at Stand to Reason, who did a lot of work with Scott, he's got this great quote. He said, "The gospel message is offensive enough. Let's not add more offense to it." I'm like, hey, the pro-life message is offensive enough, especially now, post-Dobbs, it's really offensive. Let's not add more offense to it. Let's be the loving, rational, open-minded, humble, like the kinds of pro-life people the kinds of people you want to talk to, that you're interested in, that you're intrigued by once you start talking to them. I'm talking to college students and I'm like finding ways to get them intrigued by me. I'm dropping little like seeds of like, maybe like kind of like liberal beliefs that I have that I think that they probably have too. So they can just like see, oh, okay, this isn't Ben Shapiro with a beard. It's something different. Like then they start asking me like, well, why are you pro-life then? Why is the guy who can make the argument better than me? Why like where are you coming from? We can make that happen, but sometimes you have to do a lot of common ground to get there.
Tell us a little bit about how they could get involved with Equal Rights Institute. Are you all around the country, around the world? How could they get involved?
Yeah, so we're international. A lot of our work's online. I've been into like scalable online courses from the beginning because there is a limit to how many people I can speak to physically in an amount of time. Being a husband and father and all that stuff. There is no limit to how many people can like get our courses our systematic online courses or follow our TikTok or get help that way. So we want to help. It's like that rising tide raises all ships kind of idea. Right? Like as we learn and as our groups are learning on like college campuses across the country, we're trying to figure out what is working right now. I don't care what used to work. I'm not interested in what worked 20 years ago because while truth doesn't change, culture does. So like the way that Gen Alpha and Gen Z processes data psychologically is way different than Gen X. So sometimes the arguments that worked before or the strategies that worked before maybe don't work so well now, not because I'm a moral relativist, it's because I recognize that like people change, like cultures change. This is why every generation is always like, well, in my generation, like they're always ragging on the next generation. Like they change. I'm interested in what is working right now so we can help as many pro-life people as we can figure that out as quickly as possible so they can all be having better conversations now. That's what needs to be happening. We need to be having as many great conversations about abortion with the people in our sphere of influence as possible. That is how we make this change happen. I can say all about relational apologetics. You're going to be friends with 5 or 10 people that in that context, you're able to help them to see that not all pro-life people are crazy or stupid or racist or whatever it is that they think. They're going to see, oh, well, this guy's different. So it must be more complicated. And you start having those conversations and people start actually changing their minds.
So you're saying most pro-life people are weird. Is that what you're saying?
In at least some ways, yes. I think there's a lot of weird. I think if you pull up like any random like pro-life video, like an outreach video or TikTok or something like that, I wouldn't do this, but I could probably point to some things that are like, yeah, this is a natural thing for any group of people, right?
Yeah.
Like I was a homeschool kid growing up. I didn't know until later that we all dressed weird. Like we didn't know. I didn't know I dressed weird because all my friends also dressed weird, right? Like we all dressed homeschooler. My wife literally saw my family walk into church. The first time we walked into church, she pointed and said homeschoolers. Like she knew.
Yeah.
There was a look. I'm just saying this happens. And our team is really good at getting outside of our bubble and understanding the way that pro-choice people think and the way that they perceive and react to things that they're seeing. And a lot of times it's like, again, we mean well, we just might not know how something comes across to a group of people who interprets words differently than we do sometimes. Like there's a lot of equivocation where we're using the same word, but like differently and not realizing that that's the kind of thing you just learn by having long dialogues and ask a lot of clarification questions and come at it with an open-minded attitude, like an actual, we are all on the same team trying to find truth together. That is not the way a lot of pro-life people are coming into dialogue.
So my wife and I, we just took our 8 children on a quick family trip, and my wife looks at my daughter, my teenager, and she says, "You look like a homeschooler." And she's like, "What?"
People, siblings there were. It might have been.
Well, maybe the fact that there were 8 of them. Right?
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, every once in a while we get, "Are you Catholic? Are you evangelical?"
You weren't dressed like this, were you?
Right.
Like at the vacation, you didn't have a tie.
No, I wasn't dressed in a suit and tie. No, of course
they weren't. Not what they were picking up.
No. But anyways, my wife's like, and she's like, she's offended. My daughter, my teenager, she's offended. What do you mean? What do you mean? I look. Normal people don't dress that way, and they certainly don't braid their hair that way. But I mean, there is something specifically about, well, here's this group or the next group or the next group, and that's okay. It's perfectly okay to have those.
Yeah, it's good,
but I think there's a lot of common ground out there. So give us a couple of potential tips and tricks that some of our listeners could use right out of the gate to help them have better conversations.
Yeah, when I'm early in a conversation, I'm trying to figure out what their view is about abortion. Like basically, I think of like a cartographer making a map, like the first map. I'm going to start by trying to figure out what are the borders of their view. Like if I were making a map of an island, I'd probably start with the edges, right? And so both sides actually do this with each other, and we make each other nuts when we do it, but both sides do it. So they do it to us. When they're asking about like, well, what about like rape and incest? Mm-hmm. What about life of the, what if there's a major problem with the baby? Like these kind of hard cases, extreme cases. And a lot of pro-lifers will be like, but that's not most abortions. But early on in the conversation, I'm asking someone like, what do you think about like late-term abortions? When do you think abortion should be legal? Up until what point? Like maybe they might say like 20 weeks or something like, okay, cool. Okay, so now we know that. We have some common ground there. I also don't think that abortion is after 20 weeks should be legal. Are there any reasons that you think that women shouldn't be able to have abortions? Like there's a lot of pro-choice people that say like, it is not okay to have sex-selected abortions. Like where you're actually aborting a girl because it's a girl, because in that culture, like they really value having a boy, at least the first time. Like that happens in America still sometimes. And a lot of pro-choice people would say that's not okay. Like that's not what they're supporting. So I'm just asking clarification questions and trying to get a sense of like, when do they think abortion should be legal and in what circumstances? And I'm getting a sense of, there's a lot of common ground in there, but then also I'm getting a sense of like what other clarification questions I could ask that would help me understand their view better and eventually then be ready to actually make a counter argument against their view. Be like, okay, so here's the thing that's like, here's my problem is like, it seems to me that this thing, so like, and then you kind of have this congenial back and forth and like very much like if we were hanging out at Starbucks.
Well, so you're saying it wouldn't make a very good YouTube video is what you're telling me.
No, you're never going to see a Josh Brahm destroys the pro-abortion, whatever video. I think it's really unhelpful. It's almost a meme. But like, no, like we've talked about like recording our dialogues, like, either secretly or not secretly and trying to use those for like training materials or whatever. And it's like, as soon as you're recording the conversation, you're changing.
It's different.
And it very much affects it. And so we don't do that, but we do a lot of like thinking a lot about the conversation we just had. And what can we learn from it? What did I do well? What could I have done better? Did I seem to like lose them at a certain point? Did I find it enough common ground, or was I just sort of like too in my head about the next argument I should be going to? Did I find appropriate? Like, did I sit with that information when this person told me that she had experienced sexual assault? Did I really did I honor that information, or was I too focused on the baby? Like those, we're thinking a lot about that together, so then we can help everyone else that is, learning with us to be able to be having those better conversations.
Well, I think we talked about this right before we got on the program, that our sidewalk counseling kind of steps aside and says, well, we'll throw all that kind of emotional dialogue and everything else for a more comfortable position. But when you're running or walking into an abortion facility or driving, like, you have to find some level of common ground, right?
Yeah.
And so before we have, real transformation or real change, if you don't have common ground, it's very, very difficult to, move anybody into a different decision or a different position.
It's got to be like visual common ground. Like the way that I've described, like after we made our sidewalk counseling course, I started I think the one thing I really locked in on is you have to be approachable. All the things you're thinking about. What is on your sign? What is it that you are saying as you call out to this person in that 7-second window that you have from the parking lot to the front door? Even if there isn't a clinic escort there, all of those, the way you should be thinking, number one, how can I be approachable? How can I make this person feel safe to approach me in that 7 seconds? And there's a lot of things that don't work. Bullhorns aren't going to do it, and graphic signs of abortion are not going to do it. Bible verses on signs or yelled through a bullhorn are not going to do it. But as you have seen, there are things that will work really well. Sometimes you can get someone to a pregnancy center really quickly through offering them some resources quickly and helping them see there's a different option. Sometimes we'll get really relational and take a lot of time with people before we kind of try to connect them with a pregnancy center. So there's a relational approach in our sidewalk counseling course that takes time sometime, but there's a lot of different ways to do it. But in the end, it comes it's that 7 seconds. How do you be as approachable as possible?
Absolutely. Again, we're talking with Josh Brahm of the Equal Rights Institute. So, Josh, there is so much going on in the country right now. If we can kind of take it back to home a little bit and say there's this thing called the abortion pill. Some people are calling it Plan C, or even the period pill, or calling it a bunch of different things. But at the end of the day, the abortion pill kills a child. How do we have this dialogue about this important topic?
So that's a great question. So one of the things that we like to say a lot is clarity is our friend. It's always our friend. Clarity is our friend. And so I'm going to want to make sure that when I'm having a conversation with someone, that if they bring up Plan B or Plan C, or especially if they say a phrase like abortion pill, I want to know what they mean by that. It is shocking how often Hollywood gets this wrong. In a way that's not helpful for the pro-choice side. In general, you would think they would be trying to be careful of the language. A lot of times you'll see shows where they're referring to the morning after pill as the abortion pill, which is not the way pro-choice people think about it. It's not the way all pro-life people think about it, even. And so it's what are we talking about? Are we talking about the morning after pill? Are we talking about birth control pills that people are on for months at a time? Are we talking about Ella? Are we talking about RE46? Mifepristone and misoprostol? That matters because I think there's different evidence in different cases. So here's one of many areas where pro-life people sometimes disagree with me. This is kind of comes with what happens when you bring me on a show. I am not convinced. I'm not nearly as convinced as most pro-lifers about how often I think morning after pills are causing abortions. I don't know if they actually are or not. I'm not convinced by Randy Alcorn's book, as much as I have massive respect for Randy Alcorn. What an amazing man. I'm not convinced by the arguments, by the evidence. And so there's evidence both ways. So I'm going to be really careful when I'm talking to people about morning after pill and be the science is out. I think there's some evidence that there's reasons for pro-life people like Randy Alcorn to believe that morning after pills sometimes cause these micro abortions, if you will. And there's some reasons why some people think that if that cause and effect is there, it's not there at nearly as much as you think it is. But it's really hard to study. It's really hard to study in an ethical way, which is just really, really tricky. I do know what RE46 does. I know that RE46 is going to kill a baby every time. That is the plan. That is the goal of it. Whereas morning after pill, for a lot of people, it'd be my goal is to just not be pregnant or not become pregnant or something like that. So it's going to depend on what it is that we're talking about. But if we're talking about RE46, I'm going to recognize that like there's a thing that's changed on the abortion side in the sense that chemical or RE46 medication abortions are more common now than surgical abortions. That hasn't always been the case. Like this stuff came out, in like the early 90s. And so like there was a time when it was like 10, 20% of the abortions, but it was climbing from the beginning. We always knew it would eventually be over 50%. And of course it is now. So the way the abortion is done, I don't think changes the moral conversation that we need to have with people about how should we be treating people? Who do we give equal rights to and why? And is there a reason to discount the unborn, basically? And we kind of go through that process with people, especially by focusing on equality. We have never seen so many pro-choice people become pro-life on the spot than by being like, look, in the end, you have to be pro-life to be pro-equality. Because I found that most young pro-choice people care more about being pro-equality than they care about.
Interesting.
And they care more about identifying as pro-equality than they do identifying as pro-choice.
So let's say the conversation goes to, late-term abortion, surgical abortion, the pill. Well, the pill isn't so bad. You're just taking a pill and it's like a period and, it's not a big deal. How do you answer that kind of question?
Yeah. So I would say, that's really interesting. I'm going to try to like understand more about like what's going on with you. It sounds like what I'm hearing from you is that we're agreeing like late-term abortions, we're not good with that. Like you're at least morally opposed to that, but you aren't morally opposed to RE46 abortions, like with abortion pills that are killing a baby, an embryo that's like in like the 6 to 10 week stage or something like that. So it's like, I'm going to mind because like, is that kind of what I'm getting? Is that what sounds like maybe you think there's something valuable going on here, but not here? Let's talk about that. I'm interested. Like, what's going on for you? Like, what do you think it is that makes someone valuable? The direction I'm eventually going to want to take, I'm going to want to ask a lot of questions because I don't know what they think. I can't assume just because I talked to a bunch of people before, that's not what this person thinks. Where are they coming from? But eventually what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to try to show them again by using what we call the equal rights argument, that to be pro equality, they have to actually join our side of the abortion debate. By saying like, let's actually take a little time out from talking about abortion, which is like not what they're expecting anyway. Like, let's take a break. This is actually really emotionally helpful for the conversation anyway. To be like, let's talk about like rights in general. Like let's talk about, like I'm interested in equality and like let's talk about some groups to see, like, can we agree that, would you agree that human adults should have an equal protection from violence? Everyone's like, yeah, of course. Okay, cool. We agree on that. Can we agree like newborns? Should newborns have an equal protection from violence? Just about everybody, except for like 4 philosophers, will say yes. Their newborns are in. Cool. Then I'm going to throw them a curveball. What about squirrels? Like for reals? Let's think about this for a second. I see squirrels on this campus right now. Like it seems like not cool to just go around and like kicking squirrels for fun or like shooting at them if you don't like need the food or something. I don't know why you would need to hunt squirrels on like a college campus, but like that would be weird. So everyone's going to be like, almost everyone agrees that there's something special about humans that squirrels don't have. Not everyone. I can have great conversations with the animal rights, extremist type person, but most people agree squirrels and humans are not the same. And I'm trying to figure out why. Like, what is it that gets you in? If some things get you into this, like, equal right to life circle, this equal protection from violence circle, this is really important to know what it is. What gets you in and what gets you out? This is like a life and death kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Well, what can we agree on? We agree that human adults are in. We agree that human newborns are in. We agree that squirrels are out. I'm gonna start walking through these scenarios with them and kind of find some common ground. And then eventually, they're going to be like, well, what do you think gets you in? I'm going to think there's got to be something that gives you equality that isn't something that you can get more or less of later.
Yeah.
Right? It can't be like intelligence. It can't be like, oh, humans are equal because they're equally intelligent. No, they're not.
They're not.
Go to YouTube, click on a random video, a political video, please, and just read the comments. You're going to see that not everyone thinks equally well. That's okay. They're human. They have an equal protection from violence, but it's not because of how we think. It's got to be something else. It's not sentience. It's not self-awareness. I think ultimately the thing that has the fewest problems is something like having human nature.
Yeah.
It's something like having human nature, because that would explain these answers. It explains why adults and newborns are in and why squirrels and a lot of other animals are out. And it would explain like a lot of other things about our intuitions. And if this is the right answer, and it makes more sense intuitively than basically every pro-choice answer, if that's the case, then what should that mean? Then if the unborn, now we bring it back to the unborn. Then if the unborn are human, which they totally are,
Yep.
then regardless of our intuitions, they're in. They're in. That is how we see pro-choice people become pro-life.
Incredible. Incredible. What's the next big things for Equal Rights Institute, and how can people get involved?
Yeah, there's two big things going on right now, right about as this podcast comes out, we're going to be launching several new YouTube channels with new languages. So we're releasing our quick response series, like 30th, like our best 4 minutes responding to most the big pro-choice arguments. We are coming out with now videos of that in Spanish and Danish and Hindi, using a combination of AI and volunteers from around the globe, so we can try to get that out to more people. We're really excited about the curriculum that we just put out. It's called Equip for Life Academy. People can find it at equipforlifeacademy.com, but it is a religious high school curriculum that is pro-life. It's amazing. It's meant to help a mixed classroom of pro-life and pro-choice students to be able to, instead of being more divided about this, be able to come together and learn about the most thoughtful pro-choice arguments and good responses to them, and be doing like dialogues and activities together as a group. Like, this is the best way to train people to become pro-life. So we're trying to get that in as many high schools as possible. So if any of your listeners have any connections with like principals, superintendents, dioceses, working a lot with dioceses, because they will put it in all of their schools if you can convince them. So that's a good trick. So like if anyone has connections, we would love for them to connect them with us. They can just reach out to us at Equal Rights Institute. We would love to be connected with any principal or superintendent or teacher that you know.
Great. Well, thank you much. Thank you, Josh Brahm, helping pro-lifers to be less weird. Thanks for being on the program.
It's great to be on with you. Thanks, Brian.